Partners and suppliers. This is our third dimension. Now, partners and suppliers are really organizations and people, but they're not going to fit under dimension one. The reason is, when we talk about organizations and people, we're internally focused. We're looking at our company and our organization and the people that support it. When we talk about partners and suppliers, we're talking about things external to us. Now, the other question that comes up often is, why do I have to call it partners and suppliers? Aren't they one and the same? Well, no, there's a difference between people who are your partners and people who are your suppliers, and we'll talk about that in this lesson. First, let's consider this. There are the service provider and the service consumer, and they have that relationship. We talked about that back in section 2. When we talk about that, there are some people who are consuming something and somebody who is providing that. Now, in our organization, we may be the service provider and we're selling things to our customers, right? Or our consumers. But we're probably also taking things in that we're going to use, and in that case, we're the consumer and somebody else is our service provider. That might be a partner of ours, or it might be a supplier of ours. Now, whether you're going to use a partner or a supplier is going to depend on your organization strategy. You're going to think about, is this something that is critical to our business? And if so, you probably need it more as a partner relationship. If it's something that's not as critical, it might be in the supplier relationship. Well, let me give you an example of this. My company is in partnership with PeopleCert and Excelos. Now, PeopleCert is the people who are going to test you for the EIDL4 exam, and Excelos are the people who write the exam and all of the textbooks. Because of our partnership with them, we get access to the textbooks about 6 months to a year before they're available for students. That gives us time to get them, read them, learn all the information, and then build all the practice exams and the courses for you. Also, we get all the objectives ahead of time. All of this stuff is things that Excelos and PeopleCert provide to us as part of our partnership. And because we are aligned with them in this partnership, we get all of these critical business functions and we get input into them and they get input back to us. That's a partnership. Now, if I look at a supplier relationship, on the other hand, my company has a bunch of printers in our office. Now, if you want to get some paper for the printer or you want to get some ink and toner for the printer, that's a supplier. I'm going to go up on Amazon, I'm going to order some stuff, Amazon's going to drop it on the front door, and we're now going to have paper and toner and staplers and things like that for the company. I don't need to know what Amazon's going to be doing in the next 6 months to be able to make sure that supply order is going to continue to go on. Because if Amazon stops doing printer and toner and ink, I can just pick somebody else to do it. It's a commodity. But if Excelos decided that they were going to turn off the EIDL4 certification and no longer offer it anymore, that's something that's very critical to our business, and we need to know about it. So that's the difference between this partnership and a supplier relationship. With a partner, you have a lot more buy-in. You have a lot more two-way communication. You might share plans and roadmaps. For example, Excelos has already told us when the next part of the EIDL4 certification comes out. The foundation is the first level, and then there are 5 other exams that allow you to get up to being an EIDL master. We already have the roadmap and know when those are going to happen, so we can build all of those products to that partnership. With a supplier, I don't know if Amazon's going to change the type of paper they're going to supply next week, but I really don't care. As long as it's 8.5 by 11 and it's white and it goes in the printer, that's fine by me, right? It's a big difference when you're dealing with a partnership versus a supplier. Now, this is going to influence your supplier strategy. You're going to have to think about, do I care about price most? Do I care about quality most? Do I care about being able to exchange that out with different people? Let me give you a couple of examples of this. Let's say you're building your technology and you're going to build a new website. You decide you're going to host it on the cloud. There's 3 major providers for cloud right now. You have Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and Amazon's AWS service, the Amazon Web Services. You can use any of those 3. They're all fairly equivalent, right? But you need to understand when you pick one that it's pretty painful to have to move from one to the other. And so you probably want to pick one with a long-term strategy of staying with it. Because once you pick one, you're going to get your staff trained to that certifications. So if I'm going to go with Microsoft, I'm going to get a bunch of my folks Azure qualified. If I go with Amazon, I'm going to get them AWS certified, right? And we're going to build ourselves around that strategy. It's not as easy moving from Azure to AWS as it is to go from HP paper to Boston paper, right? Paper is paper, it still fits in the printer. And so there's a different level of supplier there, but it's still a supplier. You're not going to necessarily have a partnership with AWS where they're going to give you their roadmap for the next 5 years. That's not the level of partnership you have. And so these are going to be some of the different factors that are going to affect whether you're going to be more of a commodity based and look for the lowest price, like you might for ink and toner and paper, Or if you're going to be looking at other factors that impact, such as reliability, quality, track record, if I'm going for a web provider, those are things I care about. Or all the way on the other side, we have those partnerships where we're fully involved with the long-term goals and strategies of that organization. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is this concept of a service integration. Now, with service integration, a lot of times you're going to have a lot of different things out there. If I look at the service that I use to be able to provide my videos to you, I have a video service out there, I have a storefront, I have a website, we have cloud hosting. We've got 5 or 6 different things that we have to tie together to make sure that we deliver the videos to you the way that you want to get them. Now, we do that all internally because we want to make sure it's done right and because it's a reasonable number, 4 or 5 or 6 different services. But if you're in a very large company, you might have a lot of different suppliers. I worked in one organization where we had thousands of different suppliers because we had 100,000 employees. It was a huge organization. And so we didn't want to have to deal with all of those people individually. Instead, we hired a third party called a service integrator, and it was their job to do all of the management of all of those suppliers for us. And so we would pay the integrator, and they would reach out to all of those different organizations and manage those relationships for us and make sure we got the products we needed at the time we needed and the delivery we needed. And so if you're going to integrate in a bunch of different services and a bunch of different suppliers, those service integrators can really be helpful. So to summarize partnerships and suppliers, when we talk about partnerships, this is where you're going to share common goals and risks with the partner. You're going to collaborate to achieve the desired outcomes you want, and you're going to make sure that you're both in it together. So in the example of Excelos and PeopleCert and Dion Training, we're all in it together. If Excelos starts not selling exams because their brand goes down, then employers don't want people to get certified in it, then that hurts my business as well. And so we're all in it together to make sure that the brand stays good, that employers still want it, and that IDOL is still valuable. Now, when we start talking about suppliers, on the other hand, we're talking about goods and service, right? This can be done through formal contracts. There's a clear separation of responsibilities. I pay X amount of dollars and I get X amount of bandwidth, or I get X amount of cloud space, or I get X amount of reams of paper. Whatever those things are, that's all handled through contracting, and it's a deliverable. I pay you for this, you do this amount of work. When you outsource a function, that's considered a supplier, not a partnership. Now, every organization and every service is going to depend on some extent on other organizations, whether they're partners or suppliers. There is nothing you can do that you're doing without any other partners out there. Something out there is doing it. That might be that you have a supplier like Microsoft that provides you Microsoft Office when you pay a fee. It might be your internet service provider who you're paying a monthly fee to get online to do your business. Whatever it is, there is something out there that is part of this partners and suppliers. And a lot of times there are a lot of these somethings, which is service integration and management. Service integration and management involves the use of specially established integrators to ensure that the service relationships are properly coordinated. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you think about it, there's a lot of different moving pieces here. If I go and look at my website, for example, I have the website that has to be coded by a programmer. I have the graphics that need to be added on by a graphic designer. I have somebody who needs to host this with a web server. I have the videos hosted on a different video server. I have somebody who does the credit card processing. We've got 5 or 6 or 7 different suppliers involved just to be able to run a simple e-commerce website, and probably more than that if I started listing them all out. Well, we can either do the service integration internal to the organization, meaning that I can go and work with all of these individual vendors to make sure the product works properly, or I can outsource that to a service integration and management person. And if I hire a service integrator, they'll do all of that for me. So I can contract to them, they can then go out to all of those third-party vendors, get it all working, and then just bring me back the result I want. In that case, they become a service provider to me, doing service integration, and I become the service consumer, consuming the service that I have just outsourced to them. Now, should you use a service integrator? Well, that depends on your organization strategy. Your strategy when it comes to partners and suppliers and integrators is all going to be based on your goals, your culture, and your business environment. There's a lot of different things going on out there, and figuring out what your supplier strategy is something that's going to help. For the exam though, you just need to remember that we have partners and suppliers. Partners are more closely tied into our business. Suppliers tend to be more commoditized things. And if you can keep that straight, you'll do great on the exam.